next to me are a couple of people that are heavily invested in our sneaker culture, and I could tell a lot of things about these people, but I would actually prefer them to introduce themselves. So, Susie, who are you?
Hi everyone, I'm Susie Kuhn. I'm the SVP and GM for Foot Locker in Europe, and I have been in Europe for about a year and a half. Prior to that, I spent about 16 years with Nike, living in China, the US. It's my first time living in Europe, but I've been in the sneaker industry about 25, 26 years from the retail side of things. So thanks for having me here today.
Cool. Next to her.
I'm Jort Gijsbert, collecting sneakers for already like 6 or 7 years, running an own business for 2 years right now. Really influenced by a lot of people who are on Sneakerness today. I see a lot of faces I know as well. And I'm just here to make some fun, yeah.
And next to Jort is?
I'm Josine. I'm the owner of On The Block. On The Block exists for 8 years now, and it's an independent streetwear store for women.
Can you hear us good over there? Yes?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Because the monitors are facing you, so I just had to check if you can hear us well. The reason I asked the three of you together is that what I find really interesting is that you're SVP, Senior Vice President, right, for
Yes.
Foot Locker Europe, and well, we have Jort, who has been doing his own store for 2 years. And how long have you been in your store?
8 years.
And all of these businesses are very different when it comes to scale. Like one is like a multi-billion industry, the other is just trying to do some things for themselves. But what binds you three is that you all have the same target audience. It doesn't matter, and in the end, you are a part of our culture, but everyone needs to eat as well. So you have same challenges, same target audience, just on a different scale. So I thought it would be very nice to have a chat with you guys about a couple of things. And my first question would be, what do you think drives our sneaker culture? Is it the brands, is it the seller, or is it the consumers, Susie?
I mean, I think having been with a few different brands and with a lot of different retailers in different regions, it's definitely the consumer, right? At some point, every generation, I mean, every 5 to 6 years, we get a new generation of, I guess we say 17 to 23-year-olds who are going to change the whole dynamic of sneakers. So they're the ones who are going to decide whether or not the brands are doing a good job or a bad job through their wallets or where they spend their time or, you know, in today's way, where they engage on social media. So I think ultimately kids kind of decide what sneaker culture is going to look like, and the smart brands figure out how to put it back in the hands of kids, and the brands that tend to struggle are the ones who kind of get inauthentic and try to drive their business ahead of what the kid actually wants or what trend or style is coming up. And I've seen that in China, I've seen that in the US, and I'm seeing that now in Europe. It really, it's nice when what the brand wants and what the kid wants, you know, works together. As a businesswoman, that's nice, but that's not always the way it works. And I think that's why we have such interesting dynamics between Adidas and Nike and Puma and who's hot and who's not. So I do think kids kind of decide, and I'm sorry if I'm using the word kids, like, you know, 17, I'm just old, 17 to 23-year-olds, you know, they're kind of going to decide what's cool and what fits in their life and what they want to do and express. So.
Cool. Jort, do you see, like for your store, do you have any idea what age the people are that buy stuff from you?
Yeah, it's around, it starts off with like 14 to 15, but I really think nowadays I even see kids from like 10, 11, like really collecting shoes, even selling shoes to us. So it's a really crazy world, and I think we're right now with like the cycles of hype and stuff, you definitely see a lot of Nike, but that's just because of the social media as well. And well, I think I'm a bit bored of Adidas right now, to be honest, which is pretty weird because Adidas was 4 or 5 years back like much bigger than it is right now. But mostly the people on my side, also the store, is just 14, 15. Sometimes 16, but the ages go like, the gap between the ages get bigger as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know I'm 46, I know. I know. Please don't.
64.
Don't emphasize this.
What's your birthday?
My birthday is 2nd of September,
Crap,
1975.
I am older than you. I got you
You're
by
older
2
than me?
months.
Oh, yeah. But I've got more gray hair.
2nd of September as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
I Virgo power. You just told me that kids 10 years old sell sneakers to you.
Yeah,
Are they hard bargainers or?
they are. They're like-
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's just StockX says it's like 2K worth, so I want 2K, you know? When I was like 12 years old, 2K is a lot of money, and there wasn't really a way to get your shoes back then, but it's like 14 years ago, 15 years ago.
I'm just trying to figure out if a 10-year-old will give me attitude about shit. I'll be like, you what?
Definitely like,
I think when I was 10, I was making friendship pins to put on my Vans.
Yeah.
In like Arizona. That's what I was doing at 10 years old, and I think I was giving it for like a quarter
So
to my
you-
friends, like 25 cents. That was my big business. I
so
think,
you
back then.
created a hype back
Yeah,
then
I
as
did.
well.
I did a little post embellishment on my sneakers.
Nice. Josie,
Yeah.
you focus on women,
Yep.
and how does it work for you with the age groups? What do you see?
I think they are between 18 and 35, I would say. Yeah.
And why did you start focusing on the female streetwear?
I saw a big gap. Fresh Cotton used to sell women's clothing, and then they stopped. And I actually am a web designer, so I could make websites myself. So I figured I'll just do it myself. Not as easy as I thought, of course.
No.
But 8 years later, I'm still here, and it's still hard work. Women are a little bit more complicated than men when it comes to shopping, but it's going really well. Yeah.
And when you curate stuff for your website, you actually curate, because I saw your stand and it feels like you actually pick stuff like, all right, this fits my store, instead of, I don't have the feeling that you just pick brands that fit you, but you also make the display for things you like.
Yeah.
Do you take into account if a brand has a story or a product has a story, or are you the person that makes the story around yourself?
I do, sorry, I do prefer brands that do have a story, but I also create my own story. So it's not the most important thing, but I think On The Block itself creates a whole new vibe and story for my own consumer. So it's different from the brand's consumers.
All right. Susie, we had a little pre-talk, and what I thought was really interesting is you've worked for Converse, and you told me something about Chuck Taylor and how it fits into how these stories develop. Could you dive into it a bit more?
Yeah, I spent 10 years with the Converse brand across China and the US, and one of the challenges that Converse always had is Chuck Taylor, because it's like the most ubiquitous, famous sneaker ever, and it never dies, and every generation loves Chuck Taylor for their own reason. But it's always a problem for the business side of things because it's hard to diversify against the Chuck Taylor with authenticity. So one of the things with Chuck Taylor that I kind of learned over those 10 years, especially in China, is you just have to be a really good storyteller. You have to figure out, like, Chuck Taylor does not change. It's white or black and occasionally some other colors, and it's looked the same for over 100 years. But it's amazing what kids will do with Chuck Taylors and that kind of blank canvas to turn it into their own. And there's so many trends that the market creates off of that sneaker. And, you know, as a brand, especially in China, where youth are so expressive because they've been a much more controlled retail environment. There's not that many specialty retailers. You're either a tiny boutique or you're Nike or Adidas opening up a big flagship store. There's very little in between. And so China's been doing reseller and, you know, small boutique curation as their entire customer base. And so what you found with Chuck Taylor there is, you know, whole boutiques got created on one kid customizing the Chuck Taylor and just selling those over and over and over again. And so the storytelling was so important. And I think for me, it just, it transcends anything the brand ever wanted to do. There's no business person who wants, you know, one thing because it's not, it's always gonna have ups and downs. But that's the power of the storytelling side of things, is that if you let the kids kind of decide what it's going to look like, that became the way that we actually did all of our marketing in China. Is we just connected with, they're called KOLs over there, you know, influencers here. We just connected with the ones that were amazing and were really creative and really interesting and irreverent, and let them drive a lot of our marketing, because at that point it's kind of out of your hands as a brand. I can tell you this sneaker is cool because it's part of the basketball category, but if the consumer doesn't believe it, doesn't really matter. So Chuck Taylor is a perfect example of how much one sneaker can change over so many generations. It was a punk sneaker, it was a skate sneaker, it's been hip hop, it was a part of NWA, so that sneaker has been involved in every part of kind of youth culture for the last, since James Dean, you know, in the 1950s, so it's a pretty impressive sneaker.
Jort, do you see, is it possible for you to predict what the people like now, and do you have the power to play into that?
I think we all have a certain power. What the people miss right now is the Air Max 1, because it's been 1.5 years already since it's
Yeah, so the last time when it got sold.
Yeah,
was 2019,
exactly. I
yeah?
even stutter in English. It's crazy. You
That's all
know?
good.
It's crazy. But I think right now we all have the dunk hype. Look. Well, it's Jordan, sorry, it's not a dunk. But we have a really big dunk hype now, but I don't see an Air Force 1 hype. Or I don't see the Air Max 1 hype, from back in the days, but not from this moment. I don't think we can predict, and if we even could, it's because of the influences. I think it's because of the social media, and not only from influencers or micro influencers, but also from big businesses like a Foot Locker or a Nike, advertising for a new model or something like that. But I don't really see an upcoming hype right now, to be really honest.
But when you could predict like with Nike, you can just be sure that next year is going to be 2022, so that's a 5-year cycle for the 87. There's 35 years of Nike Air Max 1. They're doing the Pata collab. There's going to be a Travis, so you know they're going to drop a lot of Air Max 1s next year. But is it possible for you, like for Foot Locker, it's easier to go to Nike and say, okay, next year you're going to put that, and you're going to get a list with GRs or normal product, and
yeah.
But for you, you're kinda.
It's just running behind.
Yeah, you have to
releases.
wait if you can get it.
Yeah.
But do you focus on those things as well, or are you more on the point if it's something I can get and I can flip, I'll just take it?
Well, I'm in contact with some stores to get my stuff, so I'm really into it. But it goes way too fast right now. There's every week a release of 8 or 9 different shoes or models. It's way too crazy. So if you like a shoe right now, next week you don't even remember the shoe from last week.
No.
It's just way too fast.
Yeah, and on that part, what you see is it used to be when there was a sneaker, then you have a drop off or 2, 4, 5, 6 weeks that someone still wanted it. But now it's didn't get these, all right, on to the next. Didn't get these, on to the next. It's it's turned into this mass consumer.
It's the same with the Travis 1 lows, right? They came out and everyone wanted to see if the price dropped to 600 or 700 euros, but it didn't, and in fact it raised. So we're right now well, I don't want that shoe anymore for 1K plus, you know.
No.
So let's move on.
Yeah.
And that's the whole story about sneaker hype right now, I think.
You had a store. You had a store before Corona.
Yep.
And then Corona came.
Yeah.
And you were like,
Yeah.
let's
Maybe
quit the
not.
store.
Yeah.
But right now, do you think you're gonna ever open that store again? Or
I would like to. I also realized that my specialty is the online business, and having an offline store, brick and mortar store, is totally different. And I also totally underestimated that. So I would love to reopen a new store on a better location also, but with more knowledge of brick and mortar store.
What was the hardest part of running a brick and mortar retail store?
Well, actually, my store was too small, so people felt very intimidated just coming in. They felt uncomfortable just looking around. And I think if I would have a bigger place, more space, that would be the first big thing for me to look at. Yeah.
And what's the major difference between brick and mortar and online for you?
Well, I sold totally different products in store than online. I also noticed it here. I have a booth here, and I sell totally different stuff than the stuff that sells well online. But on the other hand, I really prefer an offline store because of the contact with the people. That's something you really miss online, and it's hard to get noticed also online. You have to work really hard in order to get seen, and offline that's a lot easier.
Yeah, if you're in the right path of walkage, then you get to have people that just walk online.
Yeah, a lot of new customers.
Susie, what's the main difference with your focus for brick and mortar and online? Do you have the same focus, or is this just really different as well?
We have a slightly different focus. I think it's because of exactly what you said. I think consumers shop really differently online and in store, especially in this industry with sneakers. If we want to drive newness and think about what trend is coming, we're going to get quicker response in the stores. It's because it's still a place that people come in and look around and pick things up and feel them and things that are unfamiliar to them. Online for sneakers, because you have StockX and you can go find out what's sold out quickly and you can see the counts of the people looking and the ones purchasing and the price, it almost kind of dictates, I think, people to think about what's valuable and not valuable. But when you're in a store and everything has a retail price and a similar thing, you're kind of old school in that you're like, do you like the material? Do you like the shape? Does it look good on you? Does it feel fresh? Does it feel new? I love brick and mortar for retail for that. Like, I like that it's still an area of discovery. And online can be too, for sure, but it is more controlled. It's algorithms, it's data, it's influencers. So I think there is something still awesome about going into a store without knowing exactly what you want and finding something. So we kind of think about it the same. And I think the challenge of being a big retailer is the same. You still have supply constraints. I mean, no one can get enough Air Force Ones, not even Foot Locker or JD Sport or anyone. So it's not, you still have to curate stories. It's not like it's easy to run a big retailer because, you have one store that through Corona was hard to keep open. Foot Locker has hundreds of stores, really difficult to keep those open too when they're not able to be open because of government regulations. So I think when you start breaking down the scale of things, we're still operating store by store. I still have a team of people that needs to run one store, and that store is either doing well or not doing well. And it's either getting product or it's not getting product. And so we still have the same things. And I think because Foot Locker has been open since 1975 and it started out as a few stores in New York, it's still kind of the same mentality that we have, maybe one store in Utrecht, we have one store or two stores in Amsterdam. It's still only two stores in Amsterdam, I still have to get somebody to want to come into our store versus your store. I mean, it's the same exact thing when you break it down to a store level. So for us, the way we view digital is an extension of how does it help the customer find things, make it easy, whether that's membership because it gives some sort of perk or anything, because the online game really is a game of algorithm and influencers. And that's not a very corporate world in some degree, right? You either have a ton of money to buy the algorithm, or the influencer is still an independent person, and some of those want to get paid more than others, and some of those truly love it. And you're still kind of playing games with online, but physical retail is still an experience, and so you just kind of stay focused on that store by store and make sure that whatever street you're on and whatever store you have, that people keep wanting to come back because they find something new or they have a good experience there. So I try to keep it really simple because I did start out in one store. My original job was in one store. So I kind of, through my whole career, I've tried to remember that at the end of the day, it's one customer in one store with one striper or associate. And if they have a good experience, they might come back. And if they don't, they might not. So it's pretty simple.
Is it easier to tell the story in a brick and mortar retail store? maybe even the story of your own heritage, because you're also Foot Locker. It's like, it's not, you're not only telling a story about the brands you sell, but I think it's the brands together that tell your story. But what's easier? Like online, it's easier to make. If you ask me, it's easier to do content and build a feeling when I'm watching and stuff. But the feeling of walking into a store with the music, the stuff, the smells, it's just way different. But I don't know if one's easier than the other.
I mean, technically for quality control, online is easier, right? You have one set of content, you put it out there for the world, it links up if you're smart about how to link things and everyone reads the same thing. In brick and mortar, you have more quality control, right? You have, for us, we have a lot of different store managers. Sometimes our, the storytelling pictures that we need to print and put in store because we don't have digital in every single store. Sometimes they get lost in the mail. Sometimes the associate forgets to put it up. So I think they're both really hard to tell stories because one, you have to be technically really savvy, and in brick and mortar, like you have to have perfect operations. Like it has to get consistent. But ultimately, I still like stores from the standpoint that it's a physical experience, and I think especially after a year and a half of COVID, I mean, we're all here. It's exciting to be here. It's exciting to be with people and to actually have interactions. So I think the power of brick and mortar is still there, especially after COVID, because I think people missed it, especially young people. I mean, I couldn't imagine being 22 in the last year and a half, like 23. Like, that's not what I was doing at 22 years old, sitting at home watching Netflix. I mean, yeah. So. At 46, I really enjoy it, but at 22, that would have not been great.
Same. Jort, you are an authentic person. The people that follow you online know what they get. They might not know the real Jort, they know part of you. Do you think there is a challenge in trying to stay authentic? Is there going to be a moment where you think, oh shit, I might get too big and they won't recognize me as a person anymore?
People who are trying to be like authentic every single week are making like big mistakes in the long term. And I think if you want to grow like really fast, it could go like the opposite direction really fast as well. So you just need to take it easy. I just heard like, if you can't buy the algorithm online, you're like stuck in there as well. So it's a daily fight, a pain in the ass. If you get banned on Facebook ads or something, you don't have any visitors on your website for like 24 hours. So it's like a pain in the ass. So yeah, it's really hard to stay authentic, to like create like certain sales or like do online raffles and deliver a shoe to a winner who wins it eventually for free. But you don't want to be that guy who's being in the, well, if I'm just looking at me, I don't want to be the guy who's trying to, or who's taking the spotlight like every day. I'm not that type of guy. I don't want to be an influencer. I hate the word influencer. Like,
you were very clear to me.
Yeah, I don't want to be an influencer. I'm just me. Jort is just Jort, and I'm just doing my thing. And if I can eat like a piece of bread and a soup end of the day, I'm really happy. That's the focus of my main business as well. If I could eat, it's fine. And I'm looking for opportunities to open a store. I know it's really difficult because you have a lot of aspects as well. If you're too small, it's too like scary for people to come in or step by. But I think my stores will be with like a beer garden, no counter, just nice music, just a nice feeling. Like, come on in. You don't have to buy anything, but you can watch my stuff, and we can have a talk. Mm-hmm. And if you can give a customer such a feeling, it will buy eventually from itself, and not because I'm there or my products are cool. It's just the
experience.
Yeah, it is.
How do you feel about that, Jussi? Do you think that it's because I think, like, I haven't known you for a long time, but I think you're also, especially when you're curating stuff, I can imagine that the store is a direct extension of your personality.
Yeah.
Are you scared that the authenticity might get lost, or do you even think about the authenticity of stuff? Because if I speak for myself, I'm like, I've been doing content and stuff for 20 years now, and I've gone from music to, from rap to Phoenix to media to sneakers, and it's pretty fun for me to watch that people all have this different image of me, but I still never thought about it. They were like, yeah, you're so authentic. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, well,
Yeah.
let's go. But how do you see it? But I don't have to put product out there, so
Yeah.
I'm not linked to that. I think that's a different challenge.
I think being and staying authentic on the long run will pay off. I think it's very easy to get lost in the hype and to be money-minded, which of course we all are. I mean, like you say, we all have to pay our bills. But for me, it's fairly easy to stay true to what I think On The Block is and what it should be, because it's me, basically. And yeah, I cannot do things that I don't stand behind, that I don't agree on.
No.
So I only select brands and styles that I feel that are truly on the block. So yeah.
Cool, yeah. And in the end, people don't see how many things you sell. Like,
No, yeah, it don't matter.
I can't see if you sold 1,000 of those or 10.
Nobody knows.
There's no counter on that. We've talked about young people driving the culture. Is there room for old people in the story? Susie?
Yeah, I've made the self-deprecating joke about my age a few times because you always get a little nervous. I mean, insecurity kicks in the older you get and you're in this industry, so you kind of have to end up talking about heritage a little bit. So yes, there's room for old people because we have memory. You know, I remember being my first buying job, I was in Detroit and Chicago, and I was buying Rockaware, Sean John, 555 Soul, and you know, I was there when all those brands were just getting started, Anichi, like. And that was when I really started learning about sneaker culture, even though I was an apparel buyer, because it was, you know, sneaker first at that point. And it's obviously when Michael Jordan was, you know, a god on the Chicago Bulls and everything, before we knew the term the GOAT. But, you know, I mean, I guess my memory gives me a level of credibility, and I don't mind saying that I'm not gonna be like on point for 2021. I would hope that the team that are sneaker obsessed on my team will be able to do everything they need, and I'll just stay out of their way. I understand like the waves and the cycles of trend and sneaker culture and everything, and it's interesting to see how it evolves, but I think, yes, there's room for old people, but purely through memory and remembering what it's like to have an old person tell you what to do, and I try not to do that. Because it's like, it's not really up to me where sneaker culture is gonna go. I should be here to try to make sure it's accessible, that it's a good experience, that we can create, you know, like you guys at Sneakerness make sure that this is all authentic goods here, it's all certified goods. You know, I just wanna make sure like that everything becomes trustworthy inside the thing. If I can help with the back of house to make sure you guys know you're buying something authentic and real and not knockoff, and you can return it if you need to, and if it doesn't fit or something happens, like that's the type of old person corporate stuff that I can do to help make, you know, whatever ideas the younger people on my team have come to life. I mean, that's the relevance, I guess, of having someone who has the memories of when I was 23, 24, and first in the industry. I just remember what it's like to not be able to do what was absolutely right at the time, and I try to just make sure I'm letting people do what is right for the customer we serve. So that's my role that I play now. But I'm not trying to tell anyone what the trend is. That would be a problem. I mean, look at these two versus me. Let's be honest.
Nah.
But that's kind of, I think that's the role that we have, and it's awesome that we have an industry that like recognizes and lets someone like me become an executive over a business. It's because I do have the memory of it. So I'm not a banker, I'm not a consultant. Like I grew up in the industry, and yet I get to run the business side of things now, and hopefully my memory helps move forward the industry. So
In my experience, when looking at this sneaker culture thing, like the people I grew up with that loved sneakers, some of them have the tendency to be a gatekeeper and be like, oh yeah, no, it's supposed to be like this, that, and they eventually just turn into their own parents and just like saying, like a lot of people stop developing and being interested in growing at a certain age, and they just think that reality will stay in the same mind frame at 2006, and everything that changes from that mind state isn't cool. And but what I've been seeing the last couple of years is that sneaker culture has gone pop. It's just gone really popular. And then we see this with Dutch hip hop music, and this was all underground, and then it went pop. But then, eventually, from that growth, a new underground layer started again. And I feel like in sneaker culture, we're seeing the same thing now. It's gone big, like you said. It's like 10, 12-year-old kids having like the whole class on Sneakers app trying to get stuff.
Crazy.
And then you see like a couple of old guys, like a major part, like, yeah, I can't get anything more, fuck this shit, I'm out. But there's this whole new culture of guys that are my age and are like, yeah, I'm doing sales shopping. All the Air Max 90 icons were 85 euros last year. Let's go, man. I don't care anymore. So it's like this, it's like we've got this split thing now. We used to have like, there was a time like 15 years ago, like the sneakerhead people were like, I'm not buying that Foot Locker, that is an exclusive. Yep. So, and then they all started buying the same exclusive sneaker. Like, yeah, we all got exclusive sneakers and we're all wearing the same exclusive sneaker, which was like kind of fucked up. Then I had Foot Locker shoes, like, well, where did you get those? Like, yeah, Foot Locker. Oh, okay, cool. Which was like weird. But then you had like the normal market, and you had the exclusive market. And now that exclusive market has gone as big as the normal market.
It's the normal market.
And the normal shoes are starting to be the underground culture, which is like this, we're in a freeway culture now, which is...
That's what I love about it. I mean, that's the best thing about the industry. It's like whatever, like scarcity is awesome for a while because it drives like, oh my God, I got something that somebody else doesn't have.
Yeah.
But then scarcity gets manipulated at some point, right? Like we all like, and then it becomes like, well, screw this. I'm gonna just go buy what's easy to find. And so like the Nike Monarch, right? We used to call it the old dad shoe.
Yeah.
And I mean, normcore, whatever the trend is, I think it was normcore like 6 years ago, the Steve Jobs thing of just dress as basic in 1980s, American dad as you can. I mean, all those things happen, and I think it's my favorite thing about the industry. It's, I mean, I wore Crocs last week. You couldn't have paid me enough money 5 years away, I shouldn't say any of this, to wear Crocs. But I'm like, these are the most comfortable shoes in the world, and now I can wear them. Thank you. Thank you, 19-year-olds, for deciding that this was going to be cool. This is great.
Fashion god. I'm not wearing those, but just to make
if you see me at the airport, you guys, it is Crocs. They look cool, I make it work, but yeah, it's...
I believe you'll make it work, but if they look cool, I don't know. Let's not
it hasn't quite taken off in Europe the way it has in the US.
You're free to wear what you want. What are your biggest challenges for the future, Zee? To stay relevant, what do you think?
Well, it's growth, I think. Being back to just an online store with all the crazy changes on social media constantly. Being a small business with not a humongous budget, it's hard to stay stay visible. And relevant. Yeah, definitely. I think that's the biggest thing right now for me.
Yeah, right now if you're an online store, you almost have to have a media department.
Yeah, definitely.
I know.
Yeah.
I actually do promotion for a couple of brands, and Facebook sometimes I just want to go. I hate it that there isn't a customer service for Facebook and all that, where you can just drive up to and just yell at them.
Yep. Yeah.
We got banned like a couple of weeks ago again for nothing. We've suspended your advert account because there was suspicious activity.
Oh, yeah.
And we were like, no, there wasn't. Nah. Then you have to wait like 3 weeks, and then all your engagement goes by, and then after 3 weeks you get a mail like, oh sorry, you made a mistake. Excuse me, you're back on. You're like, dude. Yeah, that's a big challenge. What's your biggest challenge?
To be online on Facebook ads right now. I mean, it's ridiculous. Every week it's just like a shit show. My biggest challenge is to like open a store, and it will be my biggest focus for this year and next year as well. So
cool.
Yeah.
And what do you need except for money and a location? Are there still things knowledge-wise that you're like, I just wish I would have more knowledge on this part?
I think you get like really sucked in if you're planning to like open a store, if it's online or offline, it doesn't really matter, but you get like too much sucked in and it's not enjoyable anymore, it's just work. And I think that's the hardest challenge for someone who's doing his own thing, to like keep motivated as well, be happy, even when days are doing this, because you have like peaks, but you have like really, really, really lows, like, well, I've been there and it's just shit as well. But just like keep motivated, don't look like too much to other people, and just be yourself. That's like a really big challenge. Be yourself.
Yeah, we did a fashion talk yesterday about how to grow a career out of your hobby, and especially for creative people. Like everything is fun and games while you're being creative.
Yep.
But when you have to monetize your creativity, it's a fucking job. It's a pain in the ass.
It's a pain.
Because especially if you're really creative, all those moments you're doing like the crunching the numbers and stuff, and your brain's like, yeah, let's do a shoot. Let's do some nice. I got some nice these colors. You're like, nah, I'm still having to plan this fucking Facebook ad for like, ah. But in the end, that's what separates the entrepreneur from the hobby person in the end, that you do put in the hours that are tedious and those are the hours that pay off in the end, but it's hard, especially if you're one person. Yeah.
Just one person. But I have a lot of help from friends, and even my mom, I love her. Yeah. She helps me a lot.
Yeah.
Shout out to mom.
Yeah,
like
mommy from Europe.
Big ass out to mom. Well, we're almost at the end, but Susie, what with the weight of our culture piling onto Foot Locker's shoulders and Nike closing down all these accounts and giving more power to like 10 to 15 sellers, like big accounts, what will be your biggest challenge for Foot Locker going into the future?
I mean, I think it's almost the same exact thing, right? I mean, if you think about the way the brands are very publicly talking about their distribution strategies, with 20 years ago in the industry, I don't think Nike would have come out and said that much about its distribution strategy, right? Like that wouldn't have been when I was at Nike.
That would be weird.
It was a behind this. It was something that happened back here to figure out how to make their quarter. So it's a bold statement. It's a definite change up for our industry. I think it's going to be the same challenge. I mean, Nike, Adidas, any of the big brands, and unfortunately or fortunately right now, Nike's really big, right? The other brands are figuring out how to get some more stuff going. Adidas has had Yeezy. They have, Oswego right now, and they have some cool things going on, but they're not as big as AF1 and AJ1 and Air Max right now. So, Nike, there is a sense that can corporations try to over-control? And so we worry about the same thing, being Foot Locker, and I'm sure if, Peter from JD Sport was sitting here, he'd say the same exact thing. It's like, there's also a level of decision making that Nike's going to make about our business, that somehow is how it feels. It's not the case. You're a business, you get to be independent. But I always say the power of this whole industry is actually in everyone at Sneakerness and everyone at these sneaker festivals. So you guys are really critical, because if you really cut down to 15 accounts and make it really hard for you to stay authentic and get access and curate things, what's the industry going to look like, right? Where's the creativity going to come from? So this is where, after 25 years, it's the person who loves sneakers who's going to figure out when that decision point, it's a very business decision point, has gone too far, that it's taken away creativity, that it's cut into new ideas. The more you limit things from a corporate perspective, the least innovation you get that's driven by consumers. So those are the things that I worry about. Like, it's after Corona, because we had so much of our real life kind of changed. It's not the most creative industry. You're not quite sure what's going to happen next, right? Because we're kind of in this like very narrow zone of what's hot right now. That will open back up, and I hope that when it does open back up, which is soon, hopefully, that we're not too far down that path of consolidation, that it doesn't allow what the brands or the product engines come up with next to become cool and innovative and embellished and turned into something that actually helps culture and helps art and music. That's the thing that makes me nervous. Like, it's already a little bit boring right now. I shouldn't say that, but it is. We know that. We all live it. And if there is something cool and everything's so limited, is it going to get the innovation behind it that tends to make things even that much better and tends to lead to the next big breakthrough? So I just get nervous about the innovation and the energy of the industry, but then I come to things like this and I realize that, the next generation always figures out a way to break through the thing that's keeping them from being creative. So, yeah.
In the end, if we get bored, we just go on to the next. That's what, actually, like with the sneakers app and stuff, like the last 4 to 5 drops, people ask me, you want that sneaker? And they said, oh, I'll try for you. I didn't even try. I didn't even open the app. I was like, yeah, whatever, it's cool. Probably won't get them anyway. And then
That's a huge statement, right? That's a huge statement.
But
I'm not even
used
going to
do
try.
it.
So
I used to try everything, and I'm like, yeah, why bother?
Yeah.
Like the only thing cool about the sneakers app that it maintained on doing something that none of our mothers successfully did, and it's getting your children out of bed at 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, which is like good. But then we just go back to bed sad. It's a weird thing to put onto your branding, like this scarcity part and just making me sad at the same time. Just stop making me sad.
It started from such a good place. Like I remember being at Nike and where it all started in New York, and you started seeing like Jimmy Jams and all this stuff in Harlem, and it started for a reason. And then it's still a critical part of our sneaker culture. We all want releases, but it's interesting to see the social media and the digital kind of come in and create this moment of like, oh, I don't know how long this is going to work for. Yeah. Something will happen.
And the thing is, the bigger it gets, the more people will be sad, which is like weird.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things we're focusing on is trying to figure out how to make sure a pair of sneakers in a box gets in the hands of an actual consumer one-to-one.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's our goal as Foot Locker. Like that's what we're focused on. Regardless of what other people in the industry do around us, that's just where we want to focus, because we are in amazing neighborhoods, and we've always been in neighborhoods. We don't just open on important streets and in the best malls. I mean, we're in neighborhoods, and we've been serving kids, like I said, since 1975. And our goal right now, because we're seeing all this happen, is just, I want to just get a pair of sneakers in the hands of a kid who wants it. And, and he can rely on showing up at the store and using an app to do a reservation that's not cumbersome, or, that's the goal right now. So.
I'm sorry. We need to talk.
Do you have some tips for these two before we leave?
I mean, yeah, I would just say keep going. I mean, what I just said is important. Like, if you guys feel squeezed, it's going to hurt the industry. It's going to hurt the innovation. It's going to hurt the creativity of what we do. I mean, sneaker is way more than just, it's not about selling shoes, right? It's expression, it's art, I mean, look at some of the great artists in the other room over, in the exhibition hall. It's inspiring. And I think if you guys don't bring that to your group of friends and your network, and you don't get to curate it the way that the people that you're close to actually want to see it, something will not be right about our industry. Like, that's just the truth of it. So I think for me, you have a really tough balance of, you can probably always go out there and find money, but at what cost, right? And that's that you have to balance that integrity of what you want to do and what you want to bring to sneaker culture, versus there's a lot of money out there, and you got to decide which one feels right to you and everything. And I think that's just true in business. I mean, I never expected to be this much of a corporate person, and I never expected to be this high up in an industry. But God, I wake up every day and I'm like, all right, just do what's right for sneaker culture and kids right now, even if there's other pressures in there. And I think you guys have it maybe it's probably not a smaller scale, it's your scale. It's all relative, but just keep doing what you're doing, because the industry needs it. Because if we keep limiting it, it's going to lose all its creativity, and I think that would be terrible. I think sneakers are an incredible avenue for just what we do, and keeping things casual and keeping things really authentic. So that's my advice. Take some money, but be careful about which money you take. We all need money.
Don't post online that you like every sneaker you get. I like these all. I like all of these. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Do we have any questions? No questions? Do you guys have any questions left? No?
Well, I do have like one simple question left. What will be the biggest challenge after the Corona thing? If it all ends, then what? Do you have like a plan or a goal set out to achieve?
Well, I think never waste a crisis, right? So Corona shut down brick and mortar for a really long time and turned everything into digital. Good or bad, I don't know. But now kids want to come back, and I keep saying kids, sorry. Now people want to come back into brick and mortar retail, and they want to shop there. But it's like figuring out what it's going to settle back into. I think it's going to be more digital than it was before, because I think some of it's convenient and some of it's just easy if you already know what you want. But like, brick and mortar is still there. So for me, it's always like, how do you make sure the right product is in the right place for the customer? Like, should we be investing more of our inventory specifically behind our digital business? Should we be filling all of our stores? Should we have as many stores as we do? Should we have less? Should we have more? That's the big thing that we've got to figure out. And when you're talking about a big scaled business, I mean, you go to 20 countries in Europe, you're going to see a Foot Locker. There's a lot of decisions in that, right? You're talking about wanting your one store. I'm like, should all these stores be open? Does the customer going to come back? Is the customer in Czech Republic, in Prague, going to do the same thing as Milan? I'm not sure. I mean, we're across so many cities, and they're all reacting differently because every culture is a little different. Every digital consumer is a little bit different.
The rules are different in every country.
The rules are different, and so it's a little bit like, oh man, how many business models am I going to have to manage when this settles? Because ideally, you want to run one business model. It's really easy to run one business model. It's hard to run 10, 12, 14. And so that's the big problem when you're this big, and that's where I do think the opportunity will come from. It's hard to stay big right now, too.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I think about the most, is how many business models should we be running to make sure that we're doing what's right for the customer in each individual country, city that we're in. Because every consumers are reacting really differently. Like Italian consumers versus German consumers.
It's different.
They're really different right now in terms of their post-COVID reactions. So that's a little hard to track. So that's what I focus on.
Thank you.
Cool. I want to thank all three of you for attending this fashion talk. I want to thank you guys for sticking in here and listening to this talk. So I wish you a very nice day, rest of the weekend, and bye.
Ciao.